Now, with so many young people activated on the issue of gun policy and with their constant appearances in every media outlet available, we occasionally can get a firsthand look at exactly what kids these days are learning about the history of the United States and the Constitution and the Second Amendment, the Civil War, etc. And while it's clear that they're taught some important pieces, it also seems obvious that some vital pieces are being left out. Take the whole 3/5 of a man discussion. It's brought up often when talking about the Constitution and the authority of the Second Amendment. Now, as one student put it, the Constitution was written at a time that Black Americans were only considered 3/5 of a person. So, in fact, this is put out by one of the students at Parkland. Basically, he's questioning why we should be listening to anything written by people that viewed Black Americans as less human, as the 3/5 point seems to indicate that they did. Now, that sounds good enough. It makes sense. I mean, if you don't know history, it makes total sense in the world. Apparently, no adult bothered to provide additional information around what this meant, why it was there in the first place, and how such things played a role in later years, such as the landmark travesty of a ruling Dred Scott. Now, so here's the whole problem with this. Cameron Kasky had declared a march on Washington a bad day for tyranny, but who has faced the most tyranny in America? I mean, we talked to Kevin Dixie. Listen to this. This is his recent interview that he conducted on NRA TV.
You can't use my ethnicity for gun control because, let's be real, we talk about the Second Amendment, and then we talk about, tyranny, right?
Right.
Well, who's seen more tyranny in the United States than the black man? Let's just think about that. More than black people on this planet. Who has seen more tyranny in a country than us?
Now, if you're going to tweet about the 3/5 rule that happened with the Dred Scott case, that was Dred. This is no prompter right now for this point. This is what you should know if you're going to have this conversation. That's Dred Scott v. Sanford. That was actually decided in my hometown. And when I first started in radio, I was down the street from the old courthouse in which this was horribly decided. It was a horrible, racist Southern Democrat judge named Roger Taney, and he determined that Dred Scott could not count for more than 3/5 of a person. Why? Because Dred Scott couldn't have a firearm. In fact, Judge Taney later noted, and this is in a chapter in my first book, Hands Off My Gun, that in order for him to give Dred Scott full citizenship and count him as an actual law-abiding American, that meant that Dred Scott would have the, quote, full liberty to have and to bear arms. And Judge Taney couldn't have that. They couldn't have free black men and women enjoying the same great equalizer that white people enjoyed. And that's why I call it the great equalizer. It's not just the great equalizer. My gun is not just the great equalizer for men versus women, but also for black Americans and all Americans who've ever been persecuted.